It was a beautiful March day. A couple was celebrating their anniversary with a hike in the Great Smoky Mountains. After they wrapped it up, they hopped in their car and drove down a very popular road in the Smokies, Little River Road. And what happened after that changed their life. This is a story that my colleague John North and I are working on to bring you in the coming days. This is unusual, John, isn't it? That we would actually do this before the story actually airs, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, usually when we do a behind the headline, it's because something has already happened and we're kind of going back and talking about it and saying, hey, what did you go through and what were your impressions and what have you? But we've talked to this couple and we have a story coming this week, which I think viewers will find very compelling. But I think you and I both agreed, wow, it might be interesting for people to understand kind of what all has happened and what we've been doing with this as you prepare the television story.
Yeah, there is a method to our madness, if you will. But we're going to step you through the story much more in depth when we air the story. But let's start at the beginning.
Sure.
As a journalist, we are often hit up with story ideas or, hey, did you hear this? Or, hey, I've got a tip for you. You got a tip.
I got a tip from an attorney in town named T. Scott Jones, and we get a lot of tips. We get folks who call us, thank you very much, into the newsroom. They email us, they Facebook message us. As you said, we get tons of tips and information that we're constantly evaluating. When a lawyer calls me and says, hey, something's happened that you might find of interest, and it's also of public interest, I always listen very closely. And in this situation, he said, I have been retained by a couple who live in Morgan County, and they went through a nightmarish experience in the Smokies, and it involves Little River Road. Well, that's about all you need to tell me because, as you know, and I know, and people watching this right now know, that's a beautiful road, but it's a little bit dicey.
Yeah, we'll get to our experience, one of our experiences on Little River Road.
I mean, I first moved here in 1993, and one of the first things I did as a newcomer was make a beeline for the park, which is a jewel for us. We're so lucky to have it. And I explored a lot of the roads and the sites, and one of them that I did in my little sports car was Little River Road, which was well equipped for it because it's a winding road.
And you've got a cool little sports car, I might add.
It's a fun car to drive, and it's great for a road like this. And you have mostly, as folks may know, or if they don't, you have the river on one side, and then it's a 2-lane narrow road. And then on the other side, very often you've got rock face that is directly by you, right by you. There's little room for play. On the rock face side of the road, you really cannot go off that road. There's no way to go. You're going to be in a bad way.
So it is definitely one that we've driven on, and you don't think about it in the midst of it, but I'm thinking about it a lot now as we are diving into the story. And just to bring me into this story now, you got the tip. We often team up together on stories, and you came to me and said, hey, let me run something by you. This couple riding on this road, something happened. We're going to get into it. And it piqued my interest, and I said, I definitely want to work with you on this story. Thus began our work started out with talking to the couple, Virginia and Brad Ates, as you mentioned, from Morgan County. They agreed to talk to us. It was their 32nd anniversary, late in March. And when we sat down to talk to them, they kind of gave us a preview, if you will, of what that day was like. And with that, Daniel, take that segment of the interview so we can listen to it once again.
We had planned on going for our anniversary for an extra long weekend to Gatlinburg and stay. And so we went and stayed one night and got up early the next morning and went to hiked Abrams Falls. and it was perfect. And I was afraid it would be too hard, but it was great. And it was wonderful. We had a reservation that night to go eat
At the Peddler.
At the Peddler, using a gift card that our daughter had got us for Christmas, but we didn't get to make that.
Yeah, you didn't get to make that because something pretty tragic happened.
It did.
Tell me about what happened on that day, March 27th.
We'd finished our hike, going in that morning, went really early, no traffic in Cage Cove. Got to see all the turkeys and the deer and stuff like that. Wonderful. Was very few people on the trail going in, very private. We had a wonderful hike, coming out, living our best lives. Windows down, music going, 80s on 8. She's singing, if I'm not mistaken, Purple Rain.
I don't know.
Good choice. Good choice.
I love it.
Having a great time, and the next thing I know, every airbag in the car's out. I can't see anything. She's screaming. I feel like the car's moving, and I realize that we have a creek on the left-hand side of the road, and I'm afraid that we're rolling off in the creek. I don't know what's happened.
At this point, you heard him describe every airbag out in the car, sees black. He does not know what's happened.
It's extraordinary, and it's another reason why I think we thought people would find it so interesting is because what happened to them could happen to anybody at any moment. It was their moment, their day when that happened. And I think it's worth mentioning that Mr. Aites is in law enforcement and has been his whole life. And Mrs. Aites works for a dermatologist, I think. So you have two folks that they're rock solid people in the community. I think they told us they met at a county fair a long time ago.
37 years ago.
I loved when we were talking to them that you could tell they were just as crazy about each other as they were when they were teenagers. I haven't done the math, but I think they probably were teenagers. I mean, it's marvelous. It's just wonderful to meet these folks, but then to understand what happened to them in a split second when they're minding their own business on Little River Road, a rock slide.
A rock slide, and we have the pictures of the aftermath. Let's take a look at those, Daniel, if you don't mind. Yeah, that's what happened, a rock slide. As you can see, they are right up next to that wall of rock, and it appears that before the top of the vehicle gets under it, it hits the front, and thus the deployment of the airbags.
And Virginia's in the passenger seat, and you can see it took the brunt. Of course, they weren't going to go anywhere once the slide happened. They were stopped in their tracks, and he's driving. And I think she said when sort of her mind was a little clearer, she looked over at him, and he's gripping the steering wheel, which I would have been as well.
And he goes, "I'm hurt.
Yeah.
I'm hurt."
Yeah.
But still with that law enforcement mind probably going, despite the fact he's hurt, he's like, we got to get out of this car.
He's thinking that, and he's also in his mind ticking off kind of, all right, you have this, especially if you're in law enforcement, you are like in response mode. What are the things that you need to do? You have to keep your head level. You have to be clear, even though something phenomenal has just happened to you, and essentially the world has crashed onto you. Literally crashed onto you, and you have to figure out how to respond. You're like, I'm hurt. Are you okay? They're both badly hurt, which we're going to go into in the story, but it's an incredible moment that happens to them, and it's also on a very busy road because you have traffic coming constantly and going in both directions.
Bystanders were at this point coming to help, coming to rescue. And I'm going to give you a little tease, but we're not going to get into it right now. You have to watch this story. But he lost something very valuable, but ended up getting it back. So tune into the story, and you'll find out what it is. It's another moment in the story that just makes you go, wow. But back to the story. People are coming to their aid. They are pulled aside. They are, as you mentioned, injured, and eventually are life-starred to UT Medical Center.
And that's another situation where they're both sort of trying to process it. you know, she has a very interesting reaction, which we'll tell you about in the story, and he does too. But they have to go. They have got to be choppered out of there because they're in such bad shape and they're in such a remote location that they need medical help immediately. They talk about, and it's thankful that this happened, they were both wearing their belts. So not only did they have all the airbags in this Nissan go off, but they were also wearing their belts, saved their lives, but also the force of that caused injury to them as well.
Yeah, and they describe those injuries. Let's take a listen to the extent of those injuries.
We couldn't get out of bed ourselves. We couldn't stand up on our own. We was on walkers. I'm 54 years old. I am very confident in everything that I do. I couldn't walk without a walker. Braces on that hurt. Bless her heart, she had the back brace and a neck brace that she was in for 2.5 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Couldn't move her head. No way to be comfortable. The lives that it disrupted, but then again, the miracle that God put on us for the survival.
We have a picture of after the fact, and we'll show that now, of the injuries there, the repercussions of the injuries. You'll
There
see
they
that,
are.
yeah, you'll see they're in back braces. He had to use a walker to get around, and of course Virginia in a neck brace as well. They were extensive injuries.
Extensive, and Mr. Yates is still suffering, I think. She's healed better than he has, and they talk about that. But, I mean, the human body is not manufactured to be riding in a vehicle like that and suddenly have all of that force and energy exerted upon you. So he'll feel that for the rest of his life, I think.
And he says as much. He said, you know, as he was talking to us, one of the things that really stood out to me is that I've never really articulated this before, but this is something I know I'm going to have to live with, the pain, the injuries, and the aftermath for the rest of my life. And he said, I thought, as I mentioned, was profound that he said that for the first time out loud. You can think that, but then to verbalize it is a totally different thing.
Yeah, it's one thing to sort of subconsciously be processing, as we all are constantly, but then when sort of it comes to your mouth and you utter it, it's like, oh, wow, that's real.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and as we saw from sitting down with them, they are on the road to recovery.
Yeah.
And once again, we're talking about March, April, May, 3 months since that. They are well on the road to recovery, despite the fact they will have to deal with the repercussions of it. Shortly after, the story doesn't end there. Shortly after the accident, though, then another challenge is ahead of you. You've got to start dealing with insurance. And okay, my car's destroyed. Do I all that goes with an accident, especially a freak accident like this, if you will. They start taking the steps to get that world in order, right?
Correct. And again, remember, Mr. Yates is in law enforcement and has been in for decades, so he knows how this goes down. And unfortunately, if you've been involved in a vehicle accident of some kind, you know what happens as well. You've got to get the paperwork, like you say. It's typically pretty simple. If something happens in the city of Knoxville, you call up KPD and you go get a copy of that, and they give it to you. Same with the Knox County Sheriff's Office or other law enforcement agencies. But as our story will discuss, they ran into some problems trying to get information, what they viewed as very simple information, from the National Park Service. They needed a report.
An accident report.
An accident report, which is a pretty standard piece of paper. And that's why they hired T. Scott Jones, not because they were wanting to sue, but they weren't having any luck. And they had tried all of the pathways and we'll go into this, including one where they actually were misinformed about what they needed to do. They went through steps that it appears they really didn't need to go through and still were stymied in getting it. And it took too long, really, they think.
Thus, the reasons, as you said, to reach out to T. Scott Jones, motivated by concerns about the safety of others going forth. You and I, we mentioned this at the start. We took a little drive along Little River Road, and we want to take you along for that drive to show you, just to give you a feel for that experience, just how close you are to the rock wall. Once again, as I mentioned, I'd never thought about it that much until after we interviewed them, but it's right there.
Yeah, there's a section
upcoming, I think,
beyond the Y, and before you get to the sinks. This is what we're looking at. And that's the section where, now keep in mind, we did this in what, late May, early June, I think. So you can see that there's a lot of the vegetation. But look at that. You can see a lot of the vegetation has grown up. Keep in mind, in March, not so much of that was present at the time. March is also a time, as everybody knows, when the temperature can vacillate a lot more. It can still get down to the freezing. You can have water freezing in the rocks. It can warm up. The water can melt, which causes expansion, contraction, etc. But that's what you're looking at. That's the kind of road section. We learned in the course of this reporting, or we were reminded, that a similar incident happened. Fortunately, nobody was hurt in 2010, March of 2010, on this same section of road, and it forced the closure of the road so that they could clear the rocks. And it reminds you, kind of raises the hackles on the back of your neck to go along that roadway and be conscious of what happened in 2010 and what also happened to the Eights in this past March of 26.
And let's talk about it, though. This is an area of nature.
It is. It absolutely is. Gorgeous nature.
It is stunning. It is the jewel, if you will, of our region. But there are challenges, consequences, risks, I guess, to a degree. And that is what is motivating them. They want to know if there were any steps to check the safety of that area, the stability of these rock walls. Right. So these are their concerns. These are the questions they would like answered from the National Park Service.
Right, and they're pretty determined that they want to get that kind of information. Maybe it's a bit of a difficult environment right now for the Park Service, which is going through a lot, dealing with funding challenges, dealing with staffing challenges. You can make the argument that under the current administration, there is some concern about being too independent, if you will, in terms of how you respond to things and how visible you are in the public eye. There is some of that concern, I think, in many federal government agencies about trying to keep your head down. But anyway, they are determined for sure to try and get more information. They'd like to know things like, well, do you inspect it? How often do you inspect it? How often do we have incidents like this happen? And we're interested as well. We've made requests as well.
I was going to make that point. Yes, we want to get our answers. And that's what we do as journalists. Yes, we want to talk to the people who are impacted. But on top of that, we need the outlying information, the records, talking to officials from the Park Service if we have that opportunity. And that is what we do. We bring it all together to, in the end, bring a story that we feel is important for the public to know and hear and see.
I think this is an interesting topic, a little bit unusual, again, as we said at the onset, for multiple reasons. Obviously, it's dealing with the Smokies, which we all love and treasure and are grateful to have. But this incident reminds you that there are some hazards. And again, when you and I were on that roadway that morning, there were cars coming and going constantly. Campers, you name it. People on motorcycles, it's hugely popular. There were tubers walking along the roadway because they were going to go tubing.
That made me just kind of wince a little
Yeah.
bit as they were walking toward
And
us.
they had nowhere to
right
go.
There.
Yeah,
Exactly.
They had nowhere to go. So, I think it's arguably of public interest. It happened, as I said, in 2010 that we know about. There may have been other incidences. Plus, this couple's story is just so compelling. What they've gone through, what they mean to each other. Mm-hmm. I just think it's a very interesting watch.
Yeah, and we asked them, and I'm not going to share this, watch the story, but if they would ever drive down Little River Road again. So you'll get their answer when you tune in to our story. That will be airing in the coming days.
That's right.
John North, always great to work with you on stories. Looking forward to sharing this story, which, as you just said so aptly, that this is something that the public needs to be aware of.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.